G'day, folks. This is Rob Walter from the Guitar Society, coming to you from Sunshine Beach in Australia. Now, today we're going to talk with an inspiring, down-to-earth, all-round good bloke, multi-instrumentalist, Andy Cichon. Now, Andy has played with big names such as Shania Twain, currently plays with Billy Joel, but before moving to America, he played with Aussie household names such as Rose Tattoo. Also played and fronted his own hard rock band, Judge Mercy. We've known each other for a long time, and it's good to chat with you today, Andy. How are you?
I'm very well. It's actually 84, which I forget what that is in Fahrenheit now, 84 and sunny in Brooklyn, New York. So
Nice.
as much as I'd love to be in Noosa, I think I got you beat with the weather. Only thing is, I can't really go outside and enjoy it because I'm still in lockdown.
Yeah, mate. I was going to ask, it's 2020, it's June, pretty big year for the world. You've kind of been in the epicenter of all the stuff going on. What's it been like?
We've been in the house for 100 days, I think 101 days now since lockout was official. Having said that, we can go out, and I walk the dog, every day, and there's a soccer field nearby, and I run a 2 or 3 5Ks a week to try and stay fit. So we can walk around with masks and stuff. And there's some, restaurants that are doing, takeout and delivery food. But, we're lucky to have a nice space here. We have a little back courtyard and a barbecue and stuff. But I've been waiting for spring and summer and ready to play some golf and get outside, and I can't do it. Plus I can't gig, there's no gigs, everything's shut down, of course.
Weird.
So it's tough, but I'm trying to make good use of the time at home, recording, writing, practicing, iRacing.
Nice.
And
Andy, you don't like racing very much, do you?
Just like it just a little bit. I like my racing. Yeah. So, it's not been too bad for me, but for other people, especially people that are stuck in little, apartments in Manhattan or Brooklyn, and, and people everywhere, the risk of catching the virus and just not being able to get out are very high. One of my very good friends, Noel Rush, has been locked up in his apartment in Manhattan for that whole time.
Yeah.
So it's been tough, but it looks like in New York it's starting to get better. And but I still don't see us playing or doing shows this year.
Yeah, that's tough. Talking of shows and playing, do you think having the guitar and playing the guitar, it's a pretty big part of our lives? Imagine if you didn't have guitar and being in lockdown.
I mean, I can't even begin to fathom what that would be like. And,
Yeah.
and I'm back to being like I was as a 14-year-old. There's always a guitar up by the television upstairs. And, I'm like, pinky, 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 pinky the whole time. If I'm watching television late at night, I just never stop playing. It's almost like, having a pacifier, a dummy. It's like,
Yes.
It makes you feel good, especially if you've got something that's, that moves you emotionally, or that has, I've got some older instruments here, and you can feel the character in the old wood, the old Honduran mahogany and stuff, and it's comforting to me for sure,
Yeah, I've found that this year I'm the same. I feel like I've reverted back to being a teenager again, especially with the guitar, and just getting a new zest for playing and just everything about guitar.
Oh yeah. I mean, I made a decision about 18 months ago that I was going to do another, my sort of background is kind of rock and hard rock, and I still love that. And I made a decision that, I was going to do a record like that again. And I kind of stalled it and, bought another guitar and tried some different amps, and and it was good in a way that I still, because my playing's gotten better. I keep practicing and playing, 3-4 hours a day, but now I'm ready. So, it's like going back to being a teenager when I remember locking myself in my bedroom when I was, 17 to 20, and I just would practice for hours at a time. That was bass. Bass is my first instrument.
Yeah.
But I feel that way again now with guitar, and I love it as much as I ever have.
So you're talking about when you started playing in your bedroom, like practicing and practicing, and to make it in anything, whether it's motor racing or golf or music, you have to have drive, sense of purpose, a goal, discipline, determination. And last week we talked quickly about discipline, and I was saying how when we lived in Sydney, and I'd ring you up in the morning, say, how you going? It's probably 10 o'clock. I'd got out of bed, maybe had a cup of coffee. And what have you been doing, Andy? And you'd say, well, I've been to the gym. I've talked to the record company. I've been practicing. I've had a few golf swings. I was like, what? How do you do this? How can you be driven that much? And you said it wasn't discipline. It's you wanted to do it.
Mm. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I sort of approached it, as much as I loved it, I kind of approached it as a job as well. I mean, when my then partner would come home from work, that was our time. So I used that time during the day as best I could. And it was never a chore. It was never forced. But I used to like to come in and walk into my music room at 10 a.m. and start working.
Yep.
Break for lunch, like around 1:30, have a sandwich, stroke the cat, and then back to it, until the front door opened. And because I loved it so much, it was never a chore. I think a little bit of the discipline came from my beginnings as a classically trained pianist. I mean, I did 7 years of classical piano from age 8, I think. I started playing piano at 6.
Wow.
So that was a regimented, started off being half an hour a day practice. Then it was 45 minutes.
Yep.
And then it became, I think, an hour. And, I would be like, Mom, how much longer? 8 more minutes. But as soon as that time was over, on would come the radio, and I would then, work out some kind of pop songs on the radio on the keyboard and play for another half an hour.
Right.
But that kind of regimented thing, I think, came from that. And I think what happened was I had a guitar and I could strum a few chords and stuff, but my father was German, grew up in Berlin.
Yes.
And when I was 12, we went to Berlin for Christmas, I guess it was. And, my grandparents were old and it was winter and stuff. And I found myself spending quite a bit of time in my room with my uncle's old archtop. It was probably like a, Kmart thing from the 30s, with action that was, like that high. Oh. But I played for hours. And that's when I learned to play, worked it out,
In Germany.
And I realized in Germany for those 6 weeks, that's when I really sort of got into it. And that kind of then led me to bass, because I could read both clefs from playing piano. And the first job I ever had was playing in my dad's part-time dance band, playing Herb Albert tunes and
that
reading.
Is so cool.
Reading. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, it's the same as the bottom four strings on the guitar down an octave. Read your way through it, and that's how it kind of started.
So you played in your dad's band?
Yeah, a couple of shows, and then the younger guys in the band sort of broke away, and we started a cover band that played pretty much Creedence, Beatles, Stones, and Thin Lizzy.
In Lederhosen?
No. It was that was, then it became my life. Then that was 14, I guess.
Yeah.
And then every weekend, every waking moment, all I did was play, go to rehearsals, did weddings, played, dances and stuff. And I think the great thing was I played with guys that were 7, 8 years older than I was. So I got introduced to music that wasn't on the radio. It was stuff that had already been, classic Stones, Creedence,
Yep.
it had already been and gone. My friends were listening to, at 14, it was late 70s. So they were listening to disco or, whatever. I'm like, no, man, Rolling Stones live, get your yayas out. This is awesome,
Yeah.
But I was a 5-year-old or something when that came out,
Yeah, no guitars in disco.
No. Ding, 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 ding.
So how do you prepare for a gig, like whether it's a country gig or a stadium gig? Is it the same sort of mental preparation?
What we tend to do is that now with Billy Joel, we only do 2 shows a month. And one show is at Madison Square Garden every month. And then in the cooler months, we'll do a flyaway and do an arena show in, other parts of the country. Sometimes we go to Europe and do stuff. And in the summer, we'll play stadiums here, baseball stadiums or football stadiums.
Yep.
They're big. They're 50,000 people, sometimes 40, 50,
Small gigs.
Yeah. Last summer, I think we did Wembley Stadium, it's 60 odd thousand people, whatever. Prep wise, I mean, I've been in the band for 20 years. So I know the tunes. What you tend to lack is when you're on a roll and playing like we used to in Australia 6 nights a week, it's just autopilot. When you're playing twice a month, what I like to do is, every day I have the bass in my hand. At some point, I'll pick it up. And then, 2 days before I might run the entire set, or I'll run things that might be a little more challenging, or things that perhaps are going to, we're going to a certain town that has, we may be going to Philadelphia, which is where Billy broke out of initially, and there's a song called Captain Jack. So if I haven't played that for a year, I'll run the song,
Yep.
Home could be the Pennsylvania Turnpike. So we're going to somewhere in PA, Pittsburgh. Well, I'm going to have a listen to that. You're My Home. If we're going to New Orleans, you figure that you're going to be playing some of the more jazzier things, Big Man on Mulberry Street or Root Beer Rag. So, it's just part of general prep, and thinking about if certain towns have got certain, musical history, certain bands came out of certain towns. You might go, well, we're bound to do I don't know, say we're in Texas somewhere, we're going to launch into some ZZ Top if we're in Houston or something. That's bound to happen. So, what might he pull out of his bag of tricks? And he'll just do it. He won't give you. He won't do it at sound check. It's just like, what's that old ZZ Top thing? Tush, and off we'll go.
And
that's it. Live, 40,000 people, doesn't matter. And
it keeps you on your toes.
And it's great because it's not that, same thing every night ever. It's if we crash and burn, he'll go, well, at least it was a real rock and roll screw up. We're not on tape.
Yeah, you gave it your best.
Yeah, so it's fun, and it's as much fun. It's more fun than it's ever been.
Now that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, what have I been doing it for now? Professionally, since 84, end of 84, I moved to Sydney. So 36 years nearly, and I started gigging when I was 14. So,
wow,
a long time.
But you look so young, Andy.
Yes, right, sure.
Yes. Hey, mate, one thing that I've sort of always struggled to come to terms with is that being in the moment. Like, you're here, and this is what's happening. There's no before and there's no after, and especially like playing or performing. I think you have to be in the moment to be able to give the best you've got. Is that something that you've mastered, being able to just lock into what you were doing at that time?
Totally, and it hasn't always been that way, especially when you're a younger guy and you're kind of more worried about how cool you look rather than not even what you're playing, but what you're playing with your bandmates. That's what it's all about now. That's what it's
Mm.
all about. It's not about you as an individual. It's not about anyone else in the band as an individual. When we have great shows, we come off stage and go, man, we were locked tonight. Or if he throws us a curveball and we all pounce on it, it's like, you know, brothers and sisters together, you know.
Yes.
It's, if I can, put it to you this way, as much as you're talking about big stages and big crowds, it's very, very small up there.
Mm.
It feels like you could be in a club it feels like you could be in a rehearsal room sometimes,
Yeah.
because you play off each other so much. And when you really lock in, it's like, you know, the ultimate form of socialism in a way. We're all there for each other. It's not about the individual. That's gone along with teenage egos. You know,
Yeah.
it's about really being a team, and it really, really feels very, very small and intimate. And I think that's why this run at Madison Square Garden, which is now in year 7, you know, 7 years of monthly consecutive shows,
Mm.
that intimacy, I think, projects from the stage. People feel like it makes that monster room feel like it sounds like a cliche, but that you're playing in their living room. They feel it. They feel the intimacy on stage. And so that being in the moment is about that, me playing with my bandmates.
Mm.
And I think we all feel exactly the same way. We all come off, and like I said, if it's a great, they're all good, but every now and then there's special ones. And the special ones are like, man, we were locked tonight. That band played well. It's not you played well or you. Of course, if someone plays a great solo,
Mm.
you know, I'll go, Mark, beautiful sax solo, man. You know, that was moving. You know, but it's more, wow, we were tight tonight. You know,
We nailed it.
kind of, yeah. It feels good. It feels like, you know, you want to sort of, you know, hands in the middle, like, yeah. You know, it's fun. It's you know, it's the team.
Playing great gigs like that, what is there any like highlight gigs where they stick in your mind where you were on stage and you went, wow, this is just like goosebumps? I'm sure there's been some.
Yeah.
Any that stick out?
Yeah, I mean, of Billy's shows, obviously, Shea Stadium in 2008 was pretty spectacular.
Is that the last gig at the?
Last play at Shea, yeah, before they blew it up and
Yep.
then rebuilt. That was, you know, and that's where the Beatles played and the Who played, and at that morning I was actually sworn in as a U.S. citizen. It was a big day, you know,
Wow. Huh.
um, and we get there and we knew we had special guests like Tony Bennett and Steven Tyler, which was awesome to play Walk This Way with Steven Tyler. It was great, you know. And then, you know, we get told after sound check, McCartney's coming. He's on a plane. He's going to land. He's got 7 minutes to get from JFK Airport to LaGuardia, you know, to Shea Stadium. But the machinations are in place to make it happen. And, you know, it's like, there he is. I mean, and I don't know if you can see this, but well, I'll show you this. My Aunt Margaret gave me this album when I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
Hard Day's Night in mono, right? Um, so it's my life. It's why I do it.
Yes.
And someone, I don't know, some punter gave me this photo, but it's from Shea. And it's, oh, trying to get rid of the glare. It's Billy, Paul, and that fool playing bass over there.
Wow.
So that was pretty special. That was, we didn't come down. All of us, including Billy, didn't come down for weeks. And to play with, you know, my hero, to play with McCartney, not only one of the greatest songwriters that ever lived, but one of the greatest bass players
Yes.
that's ever lived.
From one
And
yeah. It's
I mean,
amazing.
it was just like, and you know, that we did 2 shows there, Roger Daltrey. We did, you know, My Generation with him. We did all sorts of stuff. So that was great. And I'll tell you a funny little story. That when we heard that, we weren't sure that McCartney was coming. We knew they were trying to make it happen. We only found out that day when we got to the show. So Billy calls me into the production office and says, "Hey, look, Andy, I think you've heard, probably, Paul's coming." And I'm like, "Paul who?" And he goes, "McCartney." I went, "Oh, him. Okay." Yeah. I said, "Look, he might want to play bass. How do you feel about that?" And I'm like, "Oh man, come on. It's a big day for me. I got sworn in as a citizen this morning, and you want me to play?" Oh. And he goes, which is, typical Billy. He asked how I felt about it, not
Yeah.
Paul's, And I said, "I tell you what, man, it's 98 degrees out there and about 98% humidity. I just spent an hour and a half in the blazing sun sound checking all the other guests, and you've got the only dressing room with a shower. So you let me take an effing shower in your effing dressing room, and I'll let effing Paul McCartney play effing bass." And Billy goes, "Go take an effing shower." So that was special. That was great. Uh, my first show with Billy was great, and that was, unrehearsed, 2 hours 45 minutes. I'd learnt the songs in the back lounge of the Shania Twain tour bus. That tour finished on a Sunday. I flew into St. Louis on a Thursday and did it on Friday. It was like, and that was fun. Also,
No
things like
rehearsal.
no rehearsal. And at soundcheck, he's like, "Look, it's all about you. I was filling in for 2 shows. This was December of '99. It's all about you. Whatever you need to do." And I'm like, "Bill, if I haven't got it sorted by now, we're all screwed." So he's like, "You know any Cream?" So we played Cream and Hendrix for an hour at that sound check, and then went and did the show with a lot of helpful cueing from the guys in the band. But, we got through it. And so I guess, and after that, I was asked to be the guy. So I figured, but
That's
it's not just
amazing.
those, shows, Rob. The big ones are special, but things like, uh, I remember, playing famous rooms to me back in Adelaide, the Tivoli. The first time I played the Tivoli Hotel as like a 15-year-old, it was like, "Well, I'm playing the Tiv," or my first show with Rose Tattoo. I
Yeah.
mean, it was just, 1,000 people and at a club out in the Blue Mountains, Lithgow or something like that, and it was just like unbelievable. I remember it like it was so loud, and waking up the next morning in my flat in Bondi, going, "Oh, what have I done?" And I'm like, "Oh,
Headbanging.
spectacular." That, I mean, I had a great years touring with James Rain, some of the best fun years on the road ever. Um, oh, spectacular show for me, Byron Bay Blues Festival, 1995, with Billy Thorpe. First show I ever
Oh,
did with Billy Thorpe as a 3-piece, just Billy, myself, and Paul DeMarco on drums.
wow.
And there's no footage of it, and it's really, to me, one of those standout gigs. I wish I had footage of it. It was goosebump stuff. It was great. And also we did a live recording for Judge Mercy once at the DY Hotel. It's a little 5-track EP was released from that. I think it still stands up as a pretty much a powerhouse of straight ahead rock.
Yes.
Um, and Shania Twain, the first night with her, um, I was, it basically was the culmination of my move to the States. I'd moved here in April of '97, and this was about a year later. And I'm as band leader, leading the band on stage at the Lake Placid ice hockey arena where they played the Olympic Games, the famous hockey game, And it was kind of like, okay, you've done it. This is going to be a huge tour for 2 years, and it felt pretty special, you know. Um, some of the dance moves didn't feel too special, but or
Yeah,
the
they could
outfits.
move.
But
You,
it was a great band, a really, really great band.
and you, how long had you been in the States before you got the gig with Shania? Was it a year or more?
I arrived in April of '97. The first thing I got was I played with every New York band you can imagine for $50 a set.
Yep.
You know, there's a famous street in New York called Bleecker Street. And basically, I would answer ads in the local newspaper, you know, like Entertainment Guide here, and for bass players, you know, and I'd be like, "Yep, I'll sure, but it's $50. Is it? But you know, you're going, no, I don't work for free. I rehearse, you know, I know you don't have much money. I'll rehearse for $10 an hour, or I don't even have to rehearse. Send me the stuff. I'll know all the backing vocals. I'll just show up and play."
Yep.
And you know, and I've got a kind of a bit of a reputation doing that. And I'd play with 7, 8, 9, 10 bands, you know, and then all day until I had to go to sound check or rehearsal, I was on the phone cold calling every management company in America, every single A to Z. I didn't stop.
Wow.
Hi, my name's Andy Cichon. I'm a bass player. I've moved from Sydney. And because of some of the history of the bands I played in, Rose Tattoo, Billy Thorpe, James a little bit. I'd done some recording for Ice House. There was an awareness, so I got listened to. But the first thing I did was Five for Fighting. I played with them for about 3 months. They then lost, sadly, EMI New York, who they were signed to, closed their doors, and they lost their deal for a time until they got re-signed. But at that point, I'd already gone on to join Shania. But I started with her, I think, in November of '97. So about 7 months after I got there.
I remember I was in the States backpacking, and I stayed with you on the couch, I think, in the studio.
In this house?
No, and when you were sharing with Noel.
Oh, in Manhattan, right?
Yeah, and then I remember ringing you from Colorado or somewhere, and you said, "Oh, I've got this gig with this girl from Canada, and I'm on this TV show." And I said, "Oh, who is it?" He said, "Oh, Shania Twain." And I thought, "Oh, I've never heard of her." And he said, "Oh, it's the David Letterman show. It's on Tuesday night or something." And I remember I was staying in this little shack in Brackenridge in Colorado in the middle of winter. And I turned on the TV, and this David Letterman show was on. And then sure enough, out comes this girl called Shania Twain, and there's Andy on bass. And I thought, whoa, I think this is going to be big.
Well, what we didn't realize as Australians, and I remember the day making that call to Landau Management, Bruce Springsteen, Natalie Merchant, Shania Twain. "Hi, my name's Andy Cichon. I'm a bass player, just drive, you know." And the receptionist says, "Oh, we might be looking for someone for Shania Twain." And I turned to my buddy Noel, who is Billy's security guy, you know, assistant tour manager for AC/DC, you know, Phil Collins, Ozzy Osbourne, you name it. And used to be my tour manager in Swanee back in Australia. And I turned to Noel, like, "Yeah, I'm not looking for someone for Shania Twain." I'm like, and he goes, "Big country." And I'm like, I hadn't realized she'd sold 14 million copies in the States, but we hadn't heard of her in Australia.
Not then.
So, no. So that was, you know, before the Come On Over album came out. And so I sent off my package, my resume, my headshot, my, you know, links to stuff records I'd played on and whatever, and didn't hear anything for a while, followed up. And then it turned out that, you know, some of my acquaintances knew some of the people in her organization. And in fact, I think it was Max Lubier, who is Billy Joel's tour director, knew Bruce Springsteen's tour director, George Travis, and made a call on my behalf and said, "Look, you know, this guy's a pro in Australia. We were actually going to get him to fill in for Billy back in the '90s. We couldn't find him, but he's the real deal. He should at least get his stuff listened to," which was, you know, Shania Twain and Mutt Lange had to make the choice. So then I got an audition, and the audition was the rehearsal for that Letterman show.
Wow.
And you want to talk about prep? There were 3 songs I had to learn. I must have played those songs 100 times each every day for the 3 weeks leading up to. I mean, I didn't stop. And you know, as you said, I was sharing with my friend Noel, and he's like, "You're not going to play them again?" I said, "Oh yeah, absolutely," and learn every backing vocal and every part and every nuance, because I got to get this job. I had my credit cards maxed out.
Yep.
I was like, I gave myself a year. If it didn't happen, I was going back to Australia and I was going to hang it up and go back to school.
Wow.
So it had to happen.
But that shows the drive, discipline, and focus. Yeah.
And it's still wasn't like it was a chore. You
You
know,
like doing
if
it.
you listen, you get every little nuance, every little lift of every single note, every inflection, every background vocal part that, where it cuts off, where it starts in, the sibilance or lack thereof, all the little things. This is a Mutt Lange production. You
Mm.
knew it had to be spot on.
Amazing working with Mutt Lange.
It really was. And I've had conversations with people, since, that have worked with him, like Joe Elliott from
Def Leppard.
Def Leppard, and we had a conversation actually in Sydney, and he's come to a couple of shows. He's got up with Billy a few times, and we poured some sugar on the crowd, and and it was like, we both survived the school of Mutt, but we're all much, much better, more rounded musicians for it. He has this reputation of being this perfectionist, but it's still all about groove and feel. It's got to feel right. If it doesn't feel
Yeah.
right, you know. Um, so it was, and the interesting thing, from the very first day I met him at that audition, he called me over. I'm like, "Hi, nice to meet you." He says, "You Aussies, you play differently. You play differently to anybody else in the world." I'm like, "Huh?" He said, "What do you think that is?" And I'm like, "Well, I figured you work with the best example of a rock band from my country, being AC/DC." And he goes, oh, he pretty much was very humble. Said, "I just pushed the button. They were so amazing. I pushed the red button," and which is him being humble. But I said, I caught the end of the wave in Australia. I played 6 nights a week, 45 weeks a year.
Mm.
And on Mondays, we'd have Mondays off in Rockhampton or something, and go like, well, I've got to go to the movies. I want a gig. I don't want a night off.
Yep.
And that was the kind of the end of that era, up until the early 90s, mid 90s. But AC/DC, when they were forming, man, it was like 7 nights a week and
Mm.
doubles on Friday, Saturdays, sometimes triples. In fact, I know for a fact that one day they did 5 shows in a day. A
Wow.
high school lunch, at Martin Place in Sydney, a lunchtime concert. They played, 10, 12, 14 times a week. And you you don't get that same kind of match fitness in a rehearsal room.
No, it's a good way to hone your skills.
Correct. And you couldn't do that in LA or in London. It was a great, great breeding ground, Australia, for that. And obviously Mutt agreed. The nearest guitar store to me, they moved in about a year ago, is a place called Retrofret. Oh, check that out online. I mean, what they have is incredible. Vintage stuff, not just electrics, acoustics, mandolins, ukuleles, all sorts of stuff. They are the loveliest bunch of people, and they are 150 meters from here.
Oh, wow. So what
It's
would you get? If I gave you $5,000, Andy, to buy one guitar, what would you get?
one
What would you like
guitar.
to get? One guitar.
Uh, I couldn't warrant spending that money on what. There's not one guitar I really want that badly. I actually like spending hundreds of dollars on guitars, and then hopefully ones that have already been messed with, and then making them my own. But I do love a Gibson Firebird,
Mm.
and what I really love is a Gibson Firebird with. I've always loved ebony fingerboards, and there's a Firebird 7, which is a 3 pickup model and has an ebony fingerboard. The original ones came out in about 63, 64. You can't get one of those for $5,000 unless it's been
Oh,
refinished or had a broken headstock. But they did make a really great reissue in about 1974 or 94. Has like a pearloid pick guard, and they are supposed to be great. And they're about $4,500 on the used market.
so
But there's
five.
nothing. There's nothing new. Firebird 7, Gibson Firebird 7. But there's nothing new that I think I'd really go for. I've got a bunch of older stuff here, but I've not paid silly money for them.
Mm.
So
There's something about an old guitar, isn't there? You were saying earlier, there's something about the feel of them, and there's a history there. They've been poured by so many hands and been in so many places. You don't even know what the history is, but I think it comes out in the guitar.
It's fascinating.
Sounds a bit
No,
odd,
no.
but I think it's true.
No, I concur completely. And I've got one bass that I've retired my favorite Fender Precision that I can't
One?
the white one. But I've got a 1969 or 70 Candy Apple Red Precision out on the road with Billy, one of my basses, along with my two Federas. But my thing has always been maple cap necks, very rare, from 66 to 1970, 71. It's instead of having a skunk stripe up the back of one piece of maple that's got the top finished, it's done like a rosewood board. It's a maple board, truss rod in the front, and then another maple fingerboard put on top. Yep. Now, they all make them that way now. The current ones are made that way, but not the same. So this one I bought, I own 3 or 4 of them now, I guess. But this particular bass, I found it, and I got it for a fairly decent price, although the guy that was selling it was like, I can't believe I got that much money for a 1970p bass. It's pretty much beat up. It's so beat up that around the 6th fret, the neck actually goes in about 1/8 of an inch. You can feel, I can be in complete darkness, and like there's a song we do with Billy called She's Always a Woman, which is in E flat. And I just go, zoop, there's E flat, because it actually is worn in about 1/8 of an inch. All the lacquer's gone off the neck. And I figured the guy that owned it played in a horn band, probably 4 or 5 sets a night for 40 years. And it's the Candy Apple Red is almost a green color. The headstock, I'm like, kind of dirty and stuff. And I went to clean it off one day, and I'm like, no, I'm not touching that. That's 50 years of work,
Smoke.
And the bass sounds amazing. The good ones get played, and this one's been played a lot.
Yes.
So they do have a character. I'd love to be able to speak to the owner of that instrument and know how it, did its life, what its life was like. But apparently, I paid about twice as much as the shop had from the guy who needed some money, and the shop didn't even know what it was. They're like, why did you pay that kind of money for it? And it wasn't exorbitant, but it was a few $1,000s. Like, it's got a maple cap neck. They're really rare. I love them. And the very first one I ever played belonged to the original bass player from AC/DC, Mark Evans. Ooh, and I didn't know what it was. I played that on a session, or I needed a P bass for something. I didn't own one at the time. And I'm like, what is this? And then Mark explained it to me about the maple cap thing, whatever. And I'm like, and I tried to buy it off him forever until I finally came over here, and I finally found a few.
What is it about like a piece of wood, some strings on it, that is so cool?
The wood. But it's the wood.
But I just love them. The look, the feel,
the
sound, everything. They're just
it starts with the wood. Yeah. And so, like I was saying, excuse me, $5,000. I could spend $5,000 easily, I guess, but I don't think it's going to sound as good as what did I pay for this? $600 or $700? Can you hear that?
Yes.
That is a 1965 Gibson Melody Maker, which was a student guitar. It's like half an inch. It weighs like 6 pounds. I've changed it. It's got a better wraparound bridge on it, but that's about all I've done to a nut, maybe. And I've got a P90. They come with a single coil, but this guy Curtis Novak makes a direct replacement P90 pickup. This is a rock beast. It weighs 6 pounds, and it's just got it. It just
acoustically, it sounds.
You can hear it, right?
So much.
Right. So I know that with that piece of wood, it's going to be, no matter what, you can't mess it up. As long as you put a good bridge on it and put some good frets in it, if it doesn't have frets, it's going to sound great, So that was a $700 guitar, and I would play that above any, like, 58 Les Paul that someone had paid, $90,000 for,
Yep.
or this guy here. Here's a 61. So yeah, favorite guitars, 61 Gretsch Corvette, right?
Wow.
The Gretsch build quality isn't as good as the Gibson quality. This guitar was made about 2 miles from here, 3 miles. The Gretsch factory is in Brooklyn. And there's a few things, the inlays and stuff aren't quite what it is. But this is 1961 Honduran mahogany and Brazilian, rosewood. And it's like,
born there.
You hear that? I mean, it's just got it. Now, thankfully, someone realized that the pickup that it comes with is a Hylatron Gretsch, which is a little really, really weak, insipid single coil. So the guy did me a favor and ruined the guitar by routing it out for a humbucker and putting instead of having a floating bridge, it has had an ABR1 fixed bridge in it. I'm like, thank you. That means I'm going to pay about a third. Right. But I've still got a big chunk of 1961 Honduran mahogany. I think I paid, again, like $700 for this. I put frets in it. I've put a few dollars into it. And it's got a Lindy Fralin, what I call a Firebucker pickup. It's basically designed on a Firebird, which is my favorite kind of pickup. Not overly powerful, a clear sounding pickup. But when you run it through a big fat Marshall, you don't want hot guitar, hot amp, which just becomes a saturated mess. These things have got feel and dynamics, and the harder you hit, the louder it gets, and hundreds of dollars. And I don't make any apologies for the fact that I think it'll blow just about anything else out of the water. It's the wood. It's the wood. It's all about the beautiful old Honduran mahogany.
The wood.
It's all about the wood.
Well, I can't wait to actually hear those guitars. Are they on the new recording?
They will be, yes.
Oh,
those two especially. Along with, you might recognize this old guy. The old beast from the Judge Mercy days.
Yes.
It's a 1988 Gibson Chet Atkins Country Gentleman.
It's so big that it needed its own truck to transport it.
The neck to knees guitar. But it's the interesting thing with this, because we're appealing to guitar nerds, right? It's a Gibson, not a Gretsch. It has these, this has now got Lindy Fralin pickups in it, like a 58 PAF, but it came with those Bill Lawrence circuit board pickups, which actually sound really, really good. It's a neck through, so it's solid maple all the way through. It weighs a ton. I've taken some of the other stuff off the pick guard, and it's just volume control straight to jack. That's it. No tone pots or anything. And I got a little bit old, so I've gone down to 12 to 56s instead of the 13 to 59s I used to play.
Yeah, you have bass player strings on a 6-string.
Yeah. But the other interesting thing with this is, for a Gibson, which is normally, for all you guitar nerds, 24 3/4 of an inch scale, nut to bridge, this is the same as a Strat, 25 1/2 inch. So I didn't realize why I liked the sound of it so much back in the days when I played it, back in Judge Mercy. But it's got more string tension. So even with those big strings, it feels even heavier because it's Strat length, right?
Yep.
It's got an ebony board. And that combination of things just, makes it sound, I mean, the sound is as big as the look of the guitar. It just sounds mighty. So it's my favorite.
Is that your favorite?
One of them.
It's hard to have a favorite. It's like children.
I would say that, the old, I've got 2 of those 61 Gretches and another 62, which is slightly different, all messed with. They were all non-original. I love them. I love the Melody Maker. I'll probably get another Melody Maker. And this, and then all sorts of other nonsense, and of course then there's my favorite bassist as well.
You might
Pardon
need a
me.
bigger basement soon.
The worst thing is, where do you put all the cases? Oh my goodness, it's the guitar cases. I've got racks and racks of the things here. So
Have them in the attic.
don't have an attic.
Oh, bugger.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Well, it's been awesome talking to you.
Likewise.
And hopefully we'll talk face to face soon, sooner than later.
Well, Billy's got a great affection for Australia. That sort of was one of the places he broke out of. So there's always talk of going back there to play. Obviously, we've got to see how this all shakes out with COVID. But I would like to think that there's another shot to go around. And if not, I need to come to Noosa because it's one of my favorite places on the planet. In fact, when we were out there, was it last time? We had 3 days off or 4 days off, and the road manager said to me, we were playing the arena in Boondall, is it? Out of Brisbane?
Yep.
Right. And the road manager, Mike, came to me and said, so we can stay in Brisbane for the 3 days off, and it's about an hour and 75-minute drive to Boondall, or we could stay in Noosa for the 3 days off, which is about a 90-minute drive, 15 extra minutes. What do you think the guys would like to do? And I'm like, oh God, take them to Noosa. They'll love you for the rest of your life. And everyone still, to this day, talks about those 3 days off in Noosa. All the crew, all the band, they had such a great time. So, and it's the first place I took my wife, Moore Wharf, when I first brought her out to Australia when we were, kids.
So what I'll do is I'll just keep sending photos of Sunshine Beach and Noosa just to sort of prompt the process.
Please do. And real estate listings wouldn't hurt either.
Done. All right, mate. Awesome to talk to you.
But I've actually got to remind you of how we met. Ooh. And talk about your entrepreneurial skills. In those days of, Judge Mercy, when I'd had my rose tattoo and James Rain days, and I sort of went, okay, I'm going to go out on my own and give it a shot. And money was tight, and we used to rent Toyota commuter vans from Budget, and that was expensive to go all over the country. Take out the back 2 or 3 rows, put in all our Marshalls and all our Gibsons, and off we'd go. Sometimes just the band, but sometimes the crew as well, sitting on road cases and stuff. And you enterprising young man, realized that if you could undercut Budget by a couple of $100 a week, you would have vans out all the time. And I saw your listing for your 15-seater van, Toyota, commuter van, and called you up, and we rented your van a lot and drove all over the country in it. And I'm like, this guy's kind of smart. It's like, he's not just a musician. He's like, I can make a buck out of this. So hats off to you. And what a fortuitous, piece of paper stuck on the notice board at what was that studio called in Alexandria?
Alexandria. I can't remember the name. Sound something.
Yeah, whatever that rehearsal room was.
Look, we're still talking.
It's nearly 30 years later.
Oh my God. And we'll continue to talk.
Indeed.
All right, mate. Well, take care.
You too.
And I'll talk to you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.